Hello YouTube, I'm Ephraim225 and I'm here with yet another SRPG Studio tutorial. I've gotten a couple of questions on this subject, so I thought now is probably a good time to do a video. Today we're going to be learning how to make special attacks. What do I mean by special attacks? Oh, things like Three Houses Gambits, Three Houses Meteor, things like that. You can actually get really creative with this if you know what you're doing. So that's why I'm going to teach people how to know what they are doing. So I'm just going to jump right into this and show you an example of what I'm talking about. I made a unit event command here called explode. What it does is that it allows the player to select a unit within 2 tiles of the user, and then that will create a magical explosion that damages everything within a 2-tile radius of the target. So this is going to be a great learning tool. You have to learn 3 event commands in particular. They are right here at the bottom of this page. They are extract map position, control map position, and extensive command. Now, extract map position is probably familiar to anybody who watched the shove tutorial, but extensive command is very important. It's going to be the bread and butter of this ability that we're making. So the first thing we are going to do for the first event command is extract map position. As you know, if you watch the shove tutorial, this allows you to prompt the player to select a tile based on such and such conditions that you can set. You can make it so that they select a unit, or you can make it so that they select a position. And if they select a position, you can control what terrain tiles they're allowed to pick. And if you are having them select a unit, you can make the unit that they have to select based on a number of arbitrary conditions. You can make it so that the unit they're selecting has to be a certain class, has to be holding a certain weapon, etc., etc. You can get very creative with this. This filter allows you to control whether or not they are allowed to select players, enemies, or allies. And the important part is the starting position and the range of tiles they're allowed to select. The starting position can be either a hard-coded pair of coordinates. You can feed a variable into these selections as well. So like there could be a variable for the X and Y positions, or you can just have it be a unit that counts as the starting position, in my case the active unit, or the user. The user of any item or event is the active unit. And the range can also have a variable fed into it, or it can be a constant. Or you can just have the player be able to select anything on the map by checking this All tab right here. And being able to feed variables into all of these options is allows you to be very, very creative. You could like set a variable based on some calculation of the unit stats or whatever you want, and then all of that would get fed into this range. Very, very flexible. So then these variables down here, these are the variables that all of the information about the unit that the player ultimately chose gets fed into. So these 2 variables that you set here will store the X and Y coordinates of the chosen unit, and this third variable will store the ID of the chosen unit. And you'll probably want it to be an ID variable, because there are plenty of event commands that require an ID variable if you want to use a unit ID as a variable. And finally, we have the action when canceled. This controls what switch gets set if the player deigns to cancel out of the menu and go back to the previous move that they made. Or you can disallow canceling completely. I don't recommend disallowing canceling, because if there's no valid target and the player selects the command or whatever you're making this in, then they'll get stuck. They won't be able to cancel because you disallowed canceling, and there's no valid target, so that they won't be able to select a valid target. So instead, I always use a self switch. And finally, these 2 check boxes here. Show unit window will show information about the user and the target when the player mouses over a potential target. And show message when selected basically just shows a little pop-up that says, "Are you sure you want to do that?" And then the player will be able to select yes or no. So, oh yeah, I forgot to enable triggers. So, the next command you want to put in is skip event, end current event. And you want the condition for this to be self switch A. What this means is that the command will be canceled if the player had canceled out of the extract map position option. So the next command we're going to use is control map position. Basically, this allows you to input a unit or variable for a pair of coordinates, and you can either change the terrain of that tile, or you can play an animation on that tile. In my case, I have chosen to play an explosion animation on the tile that was selected in the extract map position command. And then finally, the important part, the extensive command. Now, extensive commands allow you to basically take a single command and apply it to a wide range of targets based on whatever conditions you want to choose. The filter is the same as extract map position. It will affect only players, enemies, or allies. This also allows you to enable or disable friendly fire if you choose. You can play an animation over all of them, but this will play the animation over every single unit, so I'm probably going to recommend leaving this blank. And the event commands that you can use here, you can have the extensive command only play the animation. You can have it, you can do a bunch of stuff. You can add items to the inventories of all targets. You can increase their parameters, add skills in. You can add status effects. You can give them all experience. You can change their class. Lots and lots of stuff. But, of course, for special attacks, you are probably looking at either healing their HP or reducing their HP by certain arbitrary amounts. So that's what I'm going to put there for now. The start and range is the same as in extract map position. You can either feed a variable into this for a pair of coordinates, and then you can specify, again, a variable or a constant, or you can just have it damage everything on the map. In this case, it's going to create the explosion at the tile that was selected in the extract map position command, and then it's going to damage all units in a range of 2 tiles from the target. And the effective targets here, this allows you to choose who is vulnerable to it based on any conditions that you choose, same as in extract map position. And then in the command details, this basically allows you to edit the details of whatever command you chose in the event command dropdown. So you can play an animation over every unit that gets damaged by this reduce HP command. You can choose whether it to be a fixed amount of damage, physical damage, meaning it gets reduced by their defense score, or magic damage, meaning it gets reduced by their resistance score. And again, the actual damage amount can be a constant or it can be a variable. This allows you to, if you want the damage to be based on the unit's magic stat, for example, you can add their magic stat to a variable, add a constant to the variable, and then feed that variable into this command. And there's also hit chance. You can have it always hit, or you can specify a arbitrary chance to hit, which can also be based on a variable, so you can do calculations and then feed that result into the variable. And ignore UI here means that if you check this box, then no animation will be played and the user will not see the HP decrease. So if you just want to play the animation and then have the game silently decrease the HP of all units without actually showing it to the player, maybe you want to do that. I will leave it unchecked for this demonstration. So that is all there is to this event command that I've made. Now let's demonstrate it and see what the result of it all is. And there you go. Pretty simple, right? Very simple. Now, unfortunately, that only lets you create a command that has a range and explosion radius in a diamond shape. So what if you wanted the range of the attack to be like a line, like a certain number of tiles away from the target in a certain direction, based on whatever direction the attack was going in? Well, I have a demonstration for that too. It's a little bit tougher than what I just demonstrated, but, oh, that's not the menu I wanted. Let's go into unit events again, and I have made a cannon command. This will fire an attack in a straight line. And you can also have other kinds of ranges if you follow along with what I'm doing. I will explain as I go. So there's a lot more going on here, as you can see. The first thing I want to do is set the active unit's coordinates into a variable. This is very similar to the shove command, by the way, but it's a little bit different. I'm doing things a little bit differently here. And then we have extract map position, which will prompt the player to select a tile within one tile of the active unit and then set the variables target X and target Y to the tile that was selected. Now, this is going to be a little weird. What I'm doing here is I'm creating a command that damages enemies in a line, right? And to do that, I need to know what direction the attack is being fired in. So what I do is, like, after I have the player select a tile to target, then the game does a bunch of calculations based on what tile was selected in relation to the tile that the active unit is on. Now, unfortunately, an issue with using extract map position is that it allows the player to select themselves. It allows the user, rather, to select themselves as the target. And if that happens, the script that I've written, at least, isn't going to know what direction that the unit is supposed to be attacking in. So that's going to be weird. I've thought of a couple workarounds, like you could use this filter to prevent the player from selecting friendly units as the target. But the problem with that is that if you do that, then if the user has a friendly unit next to them, they won't be able to select that either, and that's not good either. So it's weird. Like, there's no real way to, like, filter out that center tile without, like, sacrificing something else. So I'm unfortunately going to have to say, just, you know, live with the possibility that the player is going to select themselves as the target. And then the entire command will fizzle out because, it doesn't know what direction you're supposed to be attacking in, so it just does nothing. As I've set it up here, at least. If you find your own solution to this issue, then by all means, let me know. And I will probably append this video. So after the player has selected the direction they want to attack in, we have skip event, end current event. Just like in the previous command that we talked about, this cancels out the command if the player canceled out of extract map position. And then I have skip event, end current event if X is equal to target X, because this condition is basically saying if the player selected the tile that they're currently standing on, end the current event because they targeted themselves, and we can't have that as mentioned. So now we have 4 switches. I have set up 4 global switches, up, down, left, and right. Basically, if the switch is on, then that tells the game what direction the player is attacking in. And like with the shove command in the previous tutorial, I have these conditions here. I have the game calculate y minus target y, and if it's equal to -1, then you know the player must be attacking downwards, so it flips the down switch. And the same goes for the other conditions here. X minus target X equals -1. The player must be attacking right, so flip the right switch, and etc., etc. If Y minus target Y equals 1, flip the up switch because they must be attacking up, etc. Flipping the switches makes it a lot easier on me to just set up all of these conditions. I could just set up the same condition for all of the variable changes going forward, but that would take a lot more clicks, and it annoyed me to no end. So I just decided to flip a switch and then make the switch the only condition that you have to set. Alright, so the next command is this change variable command. What I'm doing here is that I am setting the variable unit ID to the ID of the unit in target X and target Y variables. That basically gets the ID of the unit that is in that square, and then I have an extensive command to reduce the HP of that unit. You see, I have the starting position be target X and target Y, and the range is 0, so it only affects the tile that you've input into the starting position. The reason I can't just say, like, you might be thinking, well, can't you just use the reduce HP command and reduce the HP of the unit that way? Well, I could, except that for some reason in unit event commands, you cannot use reduce HP. It's blanked out for some reason, and I've never understood why that is. I don't really get it. So I just use an extensive command instead to get around that problem. So basically, after that first extensive command, you can basically repeat the same thing over and over as many times as you need to for whatever kind of attack you're making. You would then change the target X and target Y variables based on the switches that were flipped earlier, and then you would get the unit ID of the unit in the tile given by the target X and target Y variables, and then you would perform an extensive command on the unit in that tile again. And then you would change the target X and target Y variables again, and then get the unit ID if there is one, and then perform the extensive command again, and again, and again, as many times as you need. If you are making an attack that damages units in a line, then this is what you would do. If you are making a command that attacks all units in a box or heals all units in a box shape based on the direction you're attacking in, that's what you would do too. It all boils down basically to changing the target X and target Y variables and then feeding those variables into yet another extensive command as many times as you need to for whatever command you're making, times 4 because you have to do it once for every direction. And then at the end of all of your commands work, you want to change all of the direction switches from earlier to off so that when the command is run a second time, it doesn't like make a mistake based on whatever switches were on, etc. So yeah. That might have been a little bit confusing, but that's the basics of making event commands for special attacks with different weird ranges and such. There are a couple of things you should know about making commands like this. They do not give experience, like by default. You would have to grant the experience manually if the unit had like died to this attack or anything. Like you could put that in the death event of the units that were being targeted, but then you would have to put that into the death event of every single enemy unit, and that might get a little cumbersome. But yeah. Another thing you should think about is how you want to control usage of these commands, because if you just make it so that the player can use them willy-nilly, then the game better be balanced around that. But you can actually use the event conditions. Like down here in the bottom left, you have the event conditions. This allows you to make it so that the command is only usable based on a number of arbitrary conditions, as we've talked about. You can make it so that the player must have an item in their inventory, and then in the actual event command, you could reduce the durability of that item or remove it completely if you wanted it to be consumable. There's a lot you can do here. You could make it an arbitrary variable. You could make one of your stats an MP stat. If you're not using the magic stat, you could use the magic stat as MP if you wanted to. There's a lot you can do. And like I'm not even scratching the surface here. Like, the only real limitation to most implementations of special attacks, however, is that the AI can't use them. The AI cannot be made to... They can't use special unit commands. If you make a special item with a custom effect, they'll never be able to use it. And if that doesn't bother you, then that's fine. Go crazy. But if you want the enemy to be able to use these attacks, like say you make some kind of weird gambit system, I don't think you can recreate battalions and gambits completely in SRPG Studio, at least not yet. The plugin for it hasn't been written yet. However, I have developed a way to get the AI to use special attacks. It's not like the best thing. It's actually kind of a jury rig. It involves a script, so if scripting confuses you, you probably don't want to watch this part of the video, and you can just use what I've already taught you. But I will tell you how it works, because I think this will be very useful to people. So the way this method works is I have an item set up. The AI doesn't know how to use unit event commands, but it does know how to use items. So that's what we're going to use here. We're going to make an item that inflicts a state, and that state is going to be invisible. You have to check mark this hide on the menu option. And the state is basically going to be a damage state. It subtracts HP every turn, but the thing is, this state is going to be removed by an event the instant it has been inflicted. Basically, the entire purpose of the state is to mark a unit, and then an actual map event will take care of performing the attack, damaging the unit, and then it will remove the state, so that the state that actually does nothing. But the way the AI sees it is that the item inflicts a state. That's a good thing. So like in the AI's eyes, so the AI will try to use it, and when the item is used on your character will be dealt the damage of the special attack by the event, and then the status will be removed. So that's how I got the AI to do it, basically. So I'm going to show you how it works. We're going to go into our map common events, and the event is right here. Now, the way this works is that the condition for this event running is a script. And this is what the script looks like. Now, you don't really need to know anything about how the script works, because, like, it's JavaScript, so if you don't know JavaScript, you don't need to know anything about this. All you need to know is that you need to change this variable right here on the first line to the ID of the state that the event is going to react to. And you have to create two separate auto events, one for the player and one for the enemy. That's the only way I could really get it to work. Both events are the same either way. And what the event does is that part of the script is that the way the script works is that it searches for a unit with the state that you specified, and when it finds one, it puts the ID of that unit into a variable. So we then have to copy the variable into the unit ID variable, because again, you can only use ID variables in the extensive command for some reason. And then the extensive command, it starts from whatever unit ID you got from the previous variable, and then it does the extensive command however you want the extensive command to work. You can make this a command similar to the canon command that I demonstrated earlier. And then you then have another extensive command that removes the state so that the event doesn't trigger 2 times. And then you have to change the event state. You have to basically mark the event as unused, and that is actually a bug. I should fix that before I demonstrate. So yeah, that's how it works. And I should probably like put this project into a zip and upload it so you can actually see what's going on. In fact, I will probably do that because it's important for you to actually look at all of this and see how it works yourself. But I will demonstrate the item that I just made. And there you go, that's how it works. These are all the basics of creating special attacks in SRPG Studio. If I confused you at all, by all means ask me questions in the comments, and hopefully this will be a good starting point for you. Like, that's what I want my videos of SRPG Studio to be, a starting point. Get creative, try out new things, see what works, and, make something creative and show it off. Anyway, that's it for this tutorial. I will see you all in whatever video I decide to make next.